Our next pattern on the list is the prototype pattern. This one is similar to the other creational patterns that we learned in previous lectures, the factory and the builder pattern, in that it focuses on the creation of new objects. This one is different, however, and it has its own use cases for when to use this one versus the others. So let's go ahead and jump into the definition. The prototype pattern is a creational design pattern that provides a mechanism to create a new object by copying an existing one and allowing us to modify the newly created object. When to consider using it: when object initialization is costly, it allows you to create new objects by cloning existing ones, reducing the overhead of initializing objects from scratch. When creating objects with similar properties, when you need to create multiple objects with similar properties but different values. Or when reducing subclassing, when you have a class hierarchy with many subclasses that only differ in a few properties, the prototype pattern can help reduce the number of subclasses. You can create prototypes for different variations and clone them, rather than creating a new subclass for each variation. And also for when creating immutable objects. The prototype pattern can be used to create immutable objects. Since each clone is a separate instance, changes made to one instance don't affect others. So next, let's go ahead and have a look at this diagram here, because this is the diagram that I'm going to essentially use to build out our code or to create our code. So as you can see, we have three pieces. We're going to have an interface with a method of clone, and our prototype, which is going to implement this interface, and we have our client, which makes use of this prototype. Well, let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm going to start off with is starting off with our interface. So I'll do interface iPrototype, and we're going to have a clone method, which is going to take an argument of type. And it could take it's going to be either shallow or deep, but I'm going to make this a number. It's going to take in a number as an argument. So the number could be either 1 or 2. 1 if it's going to be a shallow copy, or 2 if it's going to be a deep copy. And this is going to be of type, return a type of the iPrototype. All right. So that's all we essentially need for this interface, is just this one method. So now let's go ahead and create our prototype, which is going to make use of this clone as well. So we're going to go ahead and do class, and this is going to be a menu item. It's going to implement our iPrototype. We're going to have a few properties here. We're going to start off with a name, which is going to be of type string. We're going to have a price, which is going to be a number. And we're going to have an ingredients. And this one's going to be an object. So what I'm going to do here, because I'm going to make use of this in other places and we don't want to be redundant, so let's go ahead and create a type here. And I'm going to call this ingredients. So this object is going to have here, actually, there we go, just like so. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and for the ingredients, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add 3 properties for this one. I'm just going to do lettuce, and the value for these are going to be a Boolean. So it's going to be either true or false. So if it's true, then that means that this ingredient is added, or it is part of the menu item. If it's false, then that means the lettuce does not exist, or it's not implemented for the menu item. Okay. So here we got next one. We're going to do tomatoes, also Boolean, and then we'll just do one more. Call it onions, which will also be a Boolean. Okay. So now that we got this type here, we can reuse this and have our code a lot much cleaner. So just like so. All right, next we're gonna go ahead and create our constructor and initialize some of these values here. All right, so we're gonna do name is gonna be of type string, price, number, ingredients is gonna be ingredients, and actually I made a mistake here. Yeah, there we go. All right, it's gonna be ingredients. This dot name is going to be name. This price is price. This ingredients is going to be ingredients, or ingredients, lowercase. There we go. Oop. Okay. Next we're going to implement our clone method. So we're going to have to take in a type, which is going to be of type number. This is going to return a menu item. And for our clone method, we're going to go through a condition. And based on this type here that is passed as an argument, is we're going to determine what is the appropriate clone or cloning method that we're going to approach. Is it going to be for making a shallow copy, or is it going to be for a deep copy? So we're going to do an if statement here. We're going to say if type is equal to 1, then we're going to say create a new, or create shallow copy. Else if type is equal to 2, I'm going to say create a deep copy. Else we're just going to throw a new error. We're going to say throw new error and say invalid clone type. All right, so now let's go ahead and jump here to our if statement to create our shallow copy. So if it is to create a shallow copy, the way we're going to approach this is we're going to do a return object dot assign, and this is a built-in JavaScript method which is going to take 2 arguments. All right, so the first argument is going to be the target, and then the second argument is going to be the source, or the thing we're trying to copy. Okay, so the thing we're trying to copy is this. Okay, this refers to the instance of the menu item. When we create a new menu item instance, that is what this is referring to. All right, so we're gonna copy that. We're gonna get that. We want to copy that and copy that into the target. In this case, it's just gonna be an empty object like so. Okay, so this is the thing we want to copy, or the source, and this is the target where we want to copy it to. All right, so this is all we have to do to create a shallow copy using a built-in method with using JavaScript. Okay, now to create a deep copy, this one is a little confusing, but this one does the trick. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to do a JSON.stringify of this. Okay, stringify of this. So JSON stringify is essentially, it's going to take the JavaScript object and convert it to a JSON string, into JSON format. But then we're going to have to wrap this around with something else and parse it. We're going to do a JSON parse. So now we're saying, okay, we're going to take this instance of the menu item and convert it to a JSON object, but then we're going to do the reverse, and we're going to convert it back to a JavaScript object using the JSON parse. Okay, and by doing this is going to allow us to do JSON is going to recursively go through the whole object and build out and copy a complete replication of the object for us and return the replicated object for us. So this is what we're going to do for a deep copy. Okay. All right. And that is it for our clone method. So next step is, now that we got our interface and we got our prototype, next is getting our client to make use of this prototype. So we're going to come here and let me go ahead and label these. I'm going to say that this is the prototype interface. This is our prototype. And then next, we're going to create our client. All right, for our client, we're going to go ahead and initialize a new menu item. So we're going to say new menu item, and we're going to pass in these 3 arguments. So we have the name. We're going to do cheeseburger for the first one, for the name, and for the price, we can do, let's do $10.95. And for the third argument, it's an object, which is going to take in the lettuce, tomatoes, and onions, which are of a Boolean. So we are going to say tomatoes, or lettuce, start with lettuce. And that is going to be true. So we're saying that, yes, for this cheeseburger, we want lettuce. And then for tomatoes, we're going to also say true. And then for the onions, this is also going to be true. So this is the original object, or the prototype, and we are essentially initializing this. We're setting this prototype to have these as the baseline, or the default. It's going to be the lettuce, tomatoes, and onions are going to be of true value, true. So anything that we clone from this prototype will start off with this as the copied version of it. So now let's go ahead and assign this to a variable, and we're going to say, call this original menu item. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and create the clone of this menu item. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to say the original menu item dot, and then use this clone method that we created up above. And then remember, it takes in 1 argument, and that is the type of clone we want to create. Do we want to use a shallow copy, or do we want to use a deep copy? Well, for this one, let's start off with a shallow copy. So I'll set the value at 1, and we'll assign it to a variable called cloned menu item. Okay, so at this point, we have 2 separate objects. Okay, we have the original menu item, and we have the cloned menu item. So let's go ahead and have a look to see what we get from both of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go copy this here like so, just so we can read this output much easier. So I'm going to go do another console log. So like so. So now we are console logging the original menu item, which is this line here, the first line, and then we're also console logging the cloned menu item, which is this one here. So let's go ahead and have a look to see what we get. All right. So let's go here, and I am going to say node index.js. Oh, and as a matter of fact, let me also do one more addition here. I'm going to do, let me just copy this whole line here and create a separation just so we can clearly define or clearly see the difference or between these two. All right, this should be better. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clear my console here and then rerun the code. All right, so now here you see our 2 objects. This is the original menu item, and here we have our clone menu item. So if we have a look at these two objects, notice that everything is the same, right? Everything is exactly the same. So essentially, at this point, we created a clone of our menu item. We created the clone right here by using this clone method. All right, and we can see it right here. All right, now, what do you think will happen if I was to go ahead and try to change my clone menu item? And more specifically, what if I wanted to change, say, the name of it from cheeseburger to double cheeseburger? Well, let's go ahead and have a look and see what happens. So we're going to do cloned menu item, and I'm going to say name, and then make that equal to a double cheeseburger. All right. So take a moment and think about what you think might happen. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and run this and to see if your assumptions were correct. So I'm going to clear the console and run this again. And let's have a look. All right, so this is the original menu item, which is the prototype, right? And we have the cheeseburger, the price $10.95, and then everything for the ingredients is true. For the cloned menu item, we have the double cheeseburger now, okay? But everything else is the same. All right, so this one did. Just looking at this, we can see that it appears that it's working independently, right? That the cloned menu item is completely separate from the original menu item, right? Because when we changed this clone to double cheeseburger, it didn't change the prototype or the original menu item, right? It kept the cheeseburger as is. So that's exactly what this is what it appears. But let me show you. Show you something now. Now, what if we wanted to take this object here and manipulate some of the values within this nested object? So let's change the value for the tomatoes on our cloned menu item, and let's see what happens. So I'm gonna go. Let me comment this out for now, and I'm gonna go. So I'm gonna say cloned menu item, and go to ingredients, because remember this is an object, so we have to go inside the ingredients object, and then dot tomatoes, and then make that value from true to false. All right, I'm gonna go ahead, clear the console, and rerun the code, and let's see what we get. All right, so now we have the object. So we have the cheeseburger, and cheeseburger is the same, right? Because here I uncommented this. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let me uncomment that again. Let me just rerun this. I'm gonna save this. Okay, let's rerun that. Okay. All right, so here we have our original menu item, cheeseburger, and then we changed our clone, the cloned name to be the double cheeseburger. But if we look here at the ingredients and look at tomatoes, it says false. But now look at here, look at the original menu item. It also changed to false. So how is that the case, right? Because when we changed the name, there was no issue. We were able to change the name fine, and it didn't. We were able to change the name for the clone and not have it affect the original menu item. But in this case, when we go and change a nested object, which in this case is the tomatoes, it ended up affecting the original menu item or the prototype. So that is what I was referring to earlier with the differences between the shallow copy and the deep copy. So if you decide to change or modify within your clone a nested object or an array, nested array, then you will likely stumble upon similar instance or a situation like this, where the clone impacts the prototype or the original object as well. So in order to resolve that, we're going to have to make use of a deep copy. The deep copy will essentially traverse or recursively go through the entire an object, regardless if it's nested, has a bunch of has nested objects, and make a complete replication of it, and make it completely separate from the clone. So they will be separate objects. There will be no reference from the clone to the original object, which is what's happening here when we use a shallow copy, is that the clone has a reference to the original object. And so anytime we make a change in our shallow copy or in our clone, it also affects the original object as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a look at using the deep copy. I'm going to change this value from a 1 to a 2. And this is all we need to do to make use of deep copy. So now let's go ahead and have a look at what we get as a result. Okay, so make sure I save this. I'm going to rerun the code and let's have a look. Okay, so now you see that the name is double cheeseburger. Okay, that's good. So it's not the same. And also within the ingredients, we see that the tomatoes is false, but it did not affect the original object. The tomatoes in the original object remains the same with the value of true. All right, so now we have exactly, depending on the use case, this is exactly what you would need if you want to make sure that your two objects are completely separate and there's no conflict with nested objects. Okay, so this is how we implement. This is just a simple implementation of a prototype, making use of the prototype pattern. And again, remember that for the clone, you have two different types that you can implement. You have the shallow copy and you have the deep copy. Okay, and that's what we did here. Is we set up an if-else condition to determine the type that's passed in as an argument. If it's of type 1, then we're going to create a shallow copy. If it's of type 2, then we create a deep copy. Okay, and all right, so this is your prototype pattern, and I hope you found value in this. Please like and subscribe if you liked it, or comment if you have any suggestions or any comments. Thanks for watching.